Welcome, my friends. Welcome to Touching the Edge. I'm so happy to see you today. I'm so happy because we are coming to the culmination of this practice, this framing that the end is the beginning, and recognizing that in this ending, that is the end of the beginning, that we're really finding the possibility of making something really special happen. And it really comes from having a different relationship to ourselves and those around us. Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of books on creativity recently. I listened to David Lynch's book, Catching the Big Fish, I think it's called. I also listened to Quincy Jones' book on creativity. And it's interesting, it kind of really brought me to this moment in time, this sort of relationship we have in the world, where we have so many people who are so into expressing their opinions. Now, of course, I don't mind expressing opinion, but I just want to suggest to you that there's something very, very powerful about not expecting other people to necessarily agree with your opinion. By sitting in perception, I have an incredibly deep sense of perception. I'm incredibly convicted. I believe that I know what is true just as much as anyone else does. But one of the elements that's different for me is I frame my opinion in perception, meaning that this is my perception. And in this, it allows you to have your perception. You can have an entirely different perception. My perception does not eclipse your perception, even if I believe it very strongly. And it really reminds me all the way back to, in the late 70s when talk radio really got going and really people started really getting into it, listening to people's opinion and expressing their opinion, and particularly wanting to hear opinion that coincided with what they believed and really sort of supported their sense of their sense of victimhood or their sense of being unjustly persecuted, no matter what the group. And really expressing so much of this talk radio is really expressing a judgment for some other person or some other group. And hasn't that proliferated with the internet? Now everything is so much involved with us expressing our opinion, our hot takes, our things that we don't like about someone. And so it really reminded me, again, in listening to this book on creativity by Quincy Jones, in which he said that his father told him as a piece of advice that not one drop of my self-worth is dependent on your acceptance of me. Not one drop of my self-worth is dependent on your acceptance of me. Isn't that a revolutionary idea? And I want to suggest that the flip side is also true. Not one drop of your self-worth is dependent on my acceptance of you. When we really realize this, when we really realize that the outer world does not really control our own inner self-worth, what we're really recognizing is that we have the ability to not get caught up in outcomes. And that really even comes all the way down to the relationship with your own emotions. Remember the difference between primary and secondary emotions. The primary emotion is when you feel anxious. The secondary emotion is when you feel anxious about feeling anxious, or depressed about feeling depressed, or angry about feeling angry. In much the same way, if we recognize that the primary emotion is not going to actually affect our own real deep sense of self-worth unless we multiply it, unless we make it exponential by bouncing it off of that same emotion. You get anxious about feeling anxious and suddenly it ramps into a panic attack. And so what I'm suggesting to you is cutting the string from those outcomes, both from the relationship of others, but also really cutting the string of the outcome with your own relationship with your emotions. By not being so attached to having other people have to like you. By not being so attached to feeling the way that you want to feel. You can be at peace even when you don't feel the way you want to feel, and even when others are not giving you their acceptance. So I really want to encourage this. And remember that by having these sorts of statements, not one drop of my self-worth is dependent on your acceptance of me. This ends up creating guideposts for us. Elements like this: no shame, no guilt, no judgment. Elements like give more rather than less and do it sooner rather than later. Always take the better of two witnesses. These sorts of framings help to create a silo that allows us to go directly towards our authenticity. They are reminders for us. And so I just want to use this reminder today in this second to last video. Remember that your self-worth is not dependent on other people accepting you. I thank you so much for joining. I'm going to ring the bell and I'm going to ask you to listen carefully. So here we go. I bring my hands together and I bow to you, my very, very good friend. And remember, if we express a positive relationship to the world instead of a relationship that's meant to dampen other people's self-esteem, we actually end up improving our own. Thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful day. Namaste. Thank you.